PGA Nation, we are back. We are back with a medium week, because most of the names that we play normally aren't playing this week. So we'll call it a medium week, but we're still going to have fun, and we're still going to draft, and we're still going to make some money this week. We got the John Deere Classic DPC Deere Run. It's going to be an interesting week. We're going to have some fun out here. Sia, how you doing tonight?
Byron comes in here and he's just like zingers right off the bat. So Farmer John says value pick Buckley and back 9 bets, otherwise known as Byron, otherwise known as at Model Maniac. Look, if there's any week to listen to Farmer John, it's at the John Deere, of course. So hi, Ivan. Hi, Byron. Hi, Farmer John. Just spoke with you on our Discord chat. I'm doing well. So, okay, just so everybody knows, David Bolesky is going to join us just in a couple minutes. He's going to be drafting. The audience is going to have their own team. I'm going to have my own team. Joel's going to have his own team, and David's going to have his own team. Tee-Off Sports, otherwise known as Spencer Aguiar, he's not going to be with us tonight. You'll see him back here next week. Joel, so I got to tell you, I was talking to Jason Mizrahi before the show, and I told him, Spencer wasn't coming on tonight. And he said, well, I only tune in for the model breakdown. He's like, I like your draft. It's fun, but I am so mesmerized by the model breakdown. What am I going to do? So he and I were brainstorming. And I said, listen, I don't have much to offer. I mean, we're going to talk about the course breakdown and what I'm looking for, of course. But I said, I can do something gimmicky to, get the attention of Twitter and some of our followers and fans or the audience. And he said, you got to think of something. And I only had, a few minutes to think of something. So, Joel, I thought of something. Do you want to know what it is?
I would love to.
So I'm always touting how A Few Good Men is the best movie of all time. I always say that. I say it because of the acting, because of the storyline, just everything about it. It just really captured me. And it's truly the reason I became an attorney. And I know that sounds like flippant, but no, it really is. Like the way Tom Cruise handled himself in trial and out of trial, it sort of reminded me of myself. Like this is back then, when I, a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, I can do that. I can be good at that like he is. So long story short, Jason and I decided, why don't you do the final scene of A Few Good Men, that Jack Nicholson part, the you can't handle the truth part. And because he happens to know that one of like the weird things about me is that I have that entire scene memorized. So he said, so just do that instead of the model breakdown. See if you can mesmerize some people. And I agreed to do it. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
I'm excited to see this, actually. I think this is, we deserve that. As a crew, the audience has been putting the work in. They're getting hot. This is a treat that the whole show deserves.
So David has joined us now. And David, let me catch you up. So as you know, thanks for joining us, by the way. By the way, if you're not following at Deep Dive Golf, first of all, you're probably following him in our Discord. And if you are, you hit 66-1 Hao Tong Lee last week. And if you had his other bets, you knew you were probably going to be making money regardless, because he had David, did you have the top 2 guys in that in that World Tour tournament?
I did. It was one of those dream scenarios, Sia, where 2 of my picks both made the playoffs. So it wasn't a question of, are we going to make money this week? It's how much money are we going to make this week? So ideal situation, and even better, the higher priced of those 2 won, which was Hao Tong Lee with a dramatic putt and a display of emotions that you are not going to see on many other rival tours. So no, it was an amazing week for us, and a few good top 10s over in the States as well. So massive profit last week, which was great.
And you write an article for Win Daily Sports, sometimes to the extent, because I know you like to do it like towards the deadline, towards the tee times. So sometimes Wednesday, when you don't have time, you put it in our Discord. You put everything in our Discord. Either way, if you're a Win Daily Sports subscriber, you have David's stuff. And I got to say, David, how many outrights is that on the year on the World Tour alone?
DP World Tour, that is 7 for the year. I think 8 across both tours. I had JJ Spawn at the Valero for a 150-1 win earlier in the year as well, and a fair few top 5s, top 10s. But yeah, DP World Tour particularly has been rather profitable this year. That's the second outright, I think, in the space of 3 weeks, and return on investment of plus 42% for the DP World Tour.
I just love it. And, secret here, I put some of his picks just in a World Tour DFS lineup. I didn't do it this last week, regrettably, but I've done that before, and it like cashes every time. Because listen, David's on a lot of long shots. I mean, sometimes like, you know, he'll have like a 40-1 or like a 25-1, but it's a lot of times like Haotong, it's a 66-1, whatever. But you jam those in a lineup, and if it doesn't fit or if it does fit, you can always just like message David on Discord and be like, hey, what's in our golf chat? What's a 6-man in I can have here, and he'll tell us. And I honestly think, David, you're like the best guy on the world tour that this golf community has. I mean, because I followed you, we've been sort of friends for at least a few months now, and I just was so blown away, which is why I had to like bring you in under our umbrella. I'm so glad you're here, and congratulations on that hit.
No, it's awesome. No, appreciate it, Sia. And yeah, no, great cash. And if we can spread the love and take some money out of the bookies' pockets, you know, we're all on the same side here. So let's keep that going that way.
So, David, quick question before we move on for this. I want you to educate me, because I knew Haotong Li. He would play it on the PGA Tour, but it hasn't been on the tour in at least a year. I haven't seen him. So he used to play on the PGA Tour, but now he's been full-time on the DP. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I mean, the interesting thing with Haotong is he went through this huge slump during COVID, and a lot of that was based on, I mean, he's a Chinese national originally, and given the pandemic originating there and the strict laws, he actually struggled to be able to get back to China and see his family, and it took a massive toll on his game. So he dropped right outside the top 500 of the world, and I mean, bear in mind, this is a guy who was ranked 32nd in the world at one stage, and that was part of the reason I've tipped him actually a few times over the last few weeks, because I really saw his game coming back, and I knew the base talent that he had there. I mean, he's won events like the Dubai Desert Classic and the Volvo China Open. Both of those wins were over -20 in terms of scores, and we saw a week that was going to be incredibly low scoring, and he's incredibly volatile with the putter as well. And I think if we're looking for some parallels to this week, when you're getting these really low scoring weeks, I'm looking for people who can spike with the putter. So have these really, you know, hot streaks with the putter, and even if it goes cold sometimes, that's absolutely fine, because I'm looking for that upside. And yeah, as I said, with that talent, just seeing some trends in his game that were pointing in the right direction, and it all came to fruition with 4 good rounds last week.
And I can tell you, so David's going to be on with us, I believe, next week as well for the Scottish Open, which is going to be a real help, right? Because you're going to have some of these European players that a lot of people, you know, think they might know, but certainly David knows in way more depth than any of us do. And then, of course, we have the British Open the next week, and I'm not sure if David's going to be on the show or not, but for the British Open, you know, or the Open Championship, excuse me. He's in our Discord. He's going to be writing articles. So we have a lot of stuff coming up that's going to be right in David's wheelhouse. But David, I got to tell you, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to start our draft really soon. We might have to calculate our own, the salary calculator wasn't working super well. So it'll be the same format, but I may just like on my phone, like track the salary. So we'll see how that goes. But the first thing we need to do, and David, I'm going to ask for your quick opinion on just this course. But the first thing we need to do, I promised Jason Mizrahi that I would recite, and David, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie A Few Good Men, but I promised him that I would recite the final scene, or the crux of the final scene with Jack Nicholson on this show at 5x speed, because I couldn't do it at normal speed because then it's going to look like I'm acting it out. I'm not really trying to do that. But at 5x speed, I can just rattle it off. What do you think, David? Are you ready for this? Do you think I actually have this thing memorized? I'm going to have like my eyes sort of dancing around so that you know I'm not like reading off of anything. For whatever reason, I have almost this entire movie memorized.
It's a great film, Sia, and as well as being a trainee lawyer myself, my partner's actually a lawyer in the New Zealand Air Force. So there you go. Lots of parallels indeed. So I'm looking forward to this.
That's fantastic. Joel, are you ready for this?
I couldn't be more ready.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm ready for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, so this just for context, those of you that have watched the movie, this is the part that starts where, you know, Tom Cruise, otherwise known as Daniel Alistair Caffey, he's saying, "I want the truth." And this is where you get the close up on Jack Nicholson, and he goes into this diatribe about how Daniel Alistair Caffey can't handle the truth. So I'm doing that scene that starts with, "Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns." And I'm just going to do that whole thing, and I'm literally going to do it at 5x speed. Are we ready? This is what I have to do when Spencer doesn't come on the show. I mean, it's ridiculous. All right. Okay, ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with the guns. Who's going to do it? You, Lieutenant Weinberg, have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago, you Christian Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saves lives. My existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You know what the truth is deep down in places you don't talk about at parties. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, loyalty. We use these words as a backbone of life spent defending something. Use them as a punchline. I've neither the time nor the inclination to explain myself to a man who rises and sleeps on the blanket of very freedom that I provide, and the questions made on which I provide. I'd rather you just said thank you and went on your way. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to. That's it. That actually takes
fantastic.
That actually takes like a couple minutes, but I just did it quick because it's weird to do it at normal speed. What'd you think?
You did a few things there that confirmed that you weren't, one, reading it because you were rolling your eyes around, so you couldn't have been looking at the screen. And two, you if I did that, you wouldn't be able to understand half the words I said. I would mumble jumble half it. You literally said every word. I was listening for it. That was impressive.
You can go back and slow it down via your podcast or whatever platform you listen to that. I can guarantee you that every single word is accounted for there. And that's not even I'm not even boasting, man. I kind of am, but it's that's weird to have that memorized, right? And be able to rattle it off like that. But this is what we do at Win Daily Sports. When one of our men is not here, we bring on the expert David, and then we break out some stuff that's as mesmerizing, or at least as close to as mesmerizing as Spencer's model breakdown.
And the enunciation is on point here. So if the legal career and the golf DFS career doesn't go the way you want it to, rapping, hip hop, that may be your new avenue.
Well, thank you very much. I will consider that. I will. Maybe we should tag Eminem and some artists on this podcast. I'm sure they'll respond.
Wait, so Sia, have you ever done any rapping before?
No. If that qualifies as rapping, then yes. But otherwise, no.
So I think this is a perfect time for a little wager. I think maybe based on the outcome of this week's draft, if Sia does not win, we will be getting a rap from him next week.
Wait, what I just did wasn't enough?
No, the people want more. The people want more.
All right, so we'll consider that. We'll banter about that on Twitter. Let's get to the draft, but before we do that, David, let me just tell you what I was sort of looking at here. And I know we were in our Discord yesterday kind of talking about some of this stuff. I'm really heavy on approach here. I understand driving accuracy is really important, but I also understand the fairways are pretty wide here and pretty easy to hit. So I don't want to overemphasize that because I think a lot of people will be in play off the tee. With that said, I'm kind of discounting around the green game. I'm kind of discounting the putter too. I'm looking at DK scoring, that's DraftKings for those of you uninitiated, or birdie or better, opportunities gained, things like that. I've seen bad putters do well here, and therefore I'm kind of looking at approach more than anything. I'm looking at proximities a little shorter than you, but honestly, I understand that the proximities kind of go across the gamut here. What do you want to add or kind of change from what I just said?
I think you're 100% correct. The one thing I would say with the driving accuracy is that this course has rated as one of the toughest, if you do miss the fairway, to get up and down and make par. So yes, the fairways are wide. That's a given. However, if you do miss it, the rough is incredibly penal. And not only are you looking at missing birdie opportunities, you may be looking at bogey or worse. So that is the risk that's involved. So I know that there are some stats out there that you can pull out in terms of distance of fairway missed, and that may be a good guide this week in terms of not just finding the short grass, but if you are straying, maybe just getting into that first cut and rather than into the thicker stuff. Certainly on the putting, I've already addressed that slightly, but I would say that I'm looking for spike putters more so than someone who's potentially just traditionally better at putting. And certainly in terms of statistics, you would have seen, I know that you spoke with Greg briefly, Sia, about this as well, that wedge play is essential around here. You've got a number of shorter holes. When you look at the projections of where those approach shots are going to land, the 50 to 150 bucket is basically where the majority of those approach shots fall. About 40% of your approach shots are going to be within that range, and 40% may not sound like much, but there's also a number of longer par threes here. Mm-hmm. So it translates to about 7 or 8 of the 11 par fours. You will have a wedge to a 9 iron in your hand. So that's really key area that I'm also targeting this week.
Fantastic. Joel, anything else to add in there, or did we cover it?
Well, I do want to give a quick shout out to Byron. Byron saved us tonight. As you know, Spencer's not here, and he's typically our spreadsheet guy. So Byron just uploaded our spreadsheet, got it updated so that we can draft tonight with our salaries and everything. So they say not all heroes wear capes. So Byron, thank you for your service to the DraftCast.
That is fantastic. So can we throw the board up now then, Joel?
We're going to throw it up now. So last week, Sia and the audience won. And you guys, the audience, Sia, you guys are on a hot streak. It's been the last couple, even in the weeks you haven't won, you've been getting second. So listen, I like to ride the wave when Sia's red hot picking first rounders. We just get on there. We all make money. So we're riding the audience. Let's see what you got this week. If you can keep that hot streak going, because it was the Sia and the audience who won. Sia picked the order. Sia's picking first. Audience will go second. David third, and then I will go last on the wheel with the fourth pick. Without further ado, Sia, you're on the clock.
All right, so I'm going to make this pick pretty quick. And I don't, listen, I think you can incorporate a lot of game theory here in terms of fading guys that are going to be popular. And Joel, I'll probably be deferring to you throughout this podcast in terms of, hey, is this guy high owned, that kind of thing, because I know you're looking at that more so than I am right now. But I am going to go with the chalky guy at the outset because there's one thing to play a chalky guy, and it's another thing to play a chalky guy that you think is going to win. And so in this case, I'm going to take the chalky guy that I think is going to win, and he's very expensive. And he's supposed to be expensive because he's going to win. He's 10,600. His name is Webb Simpson. His form is really starting to come around. There's still some, parts of his game that I'm not a super fan of, relative to the old Webb Simpson. I think the approach game could be better. The putter could certainly be more consistent. It's not there yet, but it's climbing. Each sort of tournament we go, we see that he's shaking off the rust. He's shaking off the injury. He continues to climb. And in this field, that climb could absolutely end up in an outright.
Listen, so the ownership for Webb does look pretty high. I got about 18 to 19, between 18 and 19%.
Yeah.
I love Webb. I think he's probably my favorite, definitely top 3 to win this tournament. So there's a lot to like about him. My only hesitation on the pick is the ownership combined with the price for him in this field, which feels like a lot of randomness. But in terms of getting the best player with the first pick, I think that's what you did.
Yeah, no, the criticism is completely fair. It's just, and I totally agree that sort of everybody's, and we'll get to this at the end of the show when we get to the outrights. A lot of people are in play more than most tournaments, right? It's a shorter course. It's, you keep it in the fairway, which most people can do. And then it comes down to like approach game and maybe like somewhat of a putting contest. But with all of that said, I do think he's going to win. And that's why in this case, I'm willing to go with the chalk. The audience is already nominating. So it looks like Adam Hadwin is the surefire second pick overall. Speaking of chalk, I mean, Webb and Hadwin, listen, that makes sense. In that 10K range, those are going to be the two most popular guys. And I think they probably have the most win equity there. So, David, between those two guys, would you play either of them? And either way, who do you like better than the other?
My preference of the two would be Webb. I think they're the two very clear favorites in that 10K range, and they will see the most ownership as a result. I mean, one thing that I'll say as well, while we're looking at this 10K range in general, where is Spence this week? This is Spence's week. Simpson is top of the board. Jason Day is fourth on the board. Like, this is Spence's ideal scenario of his guys. Really, it is. So I'll just point that out for everyone. I don't know, maybe he's just off dreaming and looking at the board and just in ecstasy somewhere at his two guys at the top.
When Jason Day is at the top of the board like this, it's been so long, he just doesn't know what to do with himself. And he can't even speak. He's like, it's a loss for words situation. So he was like, it's probably best that I'm not on this show. And then next week, when he's not at the top, I can probably handle myself a little bit better.
Exactly. He's in therapy at the moment, talking it through with someone. But no, look, of the two, I do like Webb. I was on Webb last week, and there's a ton of parallels in terms of the course fit, the course length, driving accuracy being a premium wedges to what we saw last week. Last week's a great comp course for what we're going to have here. So I do think he's a great pick. My concern with both Webb Simpson and Adam Hadwin, and it's a different circumstance what we're doing here in terms of just the four of us versing each other versus a larger tournament. I think it's the kind of week where when you are getting this, it is going to be super volatile, right? It's wedge play and it's high putting stats are going to be what wins it. it is going to be super volatile. So I think majority of the chalk you want to avoid this week, where and if you can. Of course, what we're doing here is it's just the four of us, right? So we're drawing from a limited pool. But if you're playing in 100 teams plus, some of those chalky guys you may want to look to avoid and look for some pivots within your lineup.
Yeah, and David, to your point though, like we do try to put these lineups in like a huge tournament. So we are, to your point, we are also trying to look for some pivots and some places to go where like not everybody else is going. So for everybody else listening, we are trying to keep that in mind. To your point, in this case, we did just take two really chalky guys, but I mean, I'll put it to you this way: there's a couple lineups I've already made, just like that I'm actually playing, and one has Webb Simpson, and the other one doesn't start until Charles Howell III, and I could very well, start one in the 8,800 range and go down from there and build a perfectly great lineup. So there's different ways to build this week, and you're going to be happy, I think, either way, whether you have Webb and Hadwin or whether you don't.
And before we move on, there's one quick point I want to make, because I was thinking it earlier, David, when you were explaining your Hong Kong League pick, right? And you were kind of saying this is a better golfer than what the respect he's getting right now. I'm starting to see the upswing, and now it's time to play him. And we've been saying that about Webb now for a couple of weeks, where it's like, play him now, because now look what happened. I mean, this is a unique tournament, right? It's not the normal field, but still, he's the highest priced golfer, right? And so it was kind of like, get in, because then he gets to the full swing, and there the edge is gone. Now he's the highest owned player and the highest priced golfer.
100%. And I mean, that's why I tipped him last week, as I have seen those trends coming back, and we know this guy's ability. He's won multiple times at the tour. So he absolutely has the upside. He absolutely could go out and win it, and I don't mind the pick at all from that point of view, because he can absolutely win, and you're not going to see the prices that you're seeing on him in general in the next few months, I would say.
For sure.
Sia, you're on mute.
David, thank you. It's your pick, and then we have back-to-back picks from Joel. But what I did want to say is all of you listening in team audience, definitely hit that like button if you haven't already. And yeah, David, who do you got as your first overall pick?
Yeah, so I like what you were saying, Sia, and I think there is an opportunity here to start a bit further down the board and perhaps look for a more balanced lineup, because I think there's a lot of depth once you get outside of the 8 guys who are 9,000 or above. So I'm actually going to go for a guy that I've tipped in both of the last 2 weeks at more than triple figure odds, and he's cashed massively for him. So I'm going to continue that trend and go for John
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, I've backed him last couple of weeks. I saw him spike at the Charles Schwab, so I've tipped him up at the Canadian Open and at the Travelers. He's cinched in his 25th and 13th. Great spike in his approach play. Most of that approach play as well, it's happening in the 50 to 100 yard and the 100 to 150 yard. So with a wedge in hand, super confident and happy to back him here.
Yeah, it's a great pick. And Joel, I assume he's going to be pretty popular as well. Can you see his ownership?
Yeah, I'm going to pull him up now. I do. I like him as well. He's one of my favorite plays this week. 16%. There's a range of guys down here. I don't know how many. My guess is 10 to 12. They're all around 15%. So that's not all going to stick. I guess you have to use all your salary, so maybe it will, just how you build lineups. But I wouldn't try and just fade all those guys, just because you got to play some of these guys. So yeah, 15% is a little high, but I'm seeing a trend. There's a lot of guys in that range above that ownership.
Yeah, and he's certainly coming in with really good form. So, okay, Joel, you've got it's on you. You've got a lot of responsibilities because you're typing these in, but you also got back-to-back picks, which I kind of did you wrong here. Not only do you have to type them in, but you have back-to-back picks. So 2 picks in a row.
I appreciate the support, but I can handle it. I'm ready to rock. I am making a quick decision. Okay, so with my first pick, I'm going to go with a guy who I just like the way he's been playing. Now, he missed a cut last week at the Travelers, but I've been touting him now for a few weeks. And I'm going to go with Denny McCarthy. Now, I can list a million reasons why I don't like him. He's overpriced for who he is, for sure. 9.9, way too much for most tournaments for Denny McCarthy. But if this is going to be one of those tournaments where it's kind of like a putting contest, there's probably no one I'd rather have in a putting contest than Denny McCarthy. So I'm going to start there. And the saving grace to him being overpriced is the way this tournament breaks down. Outside of basically all the guys we just took in the first round, you can pretty much play whoever you want. There's not going to be a big difference. You don't feel like you have to go to the upper tier. All these guys kind of feel like they're on the same line. So from there, with my next pick, another guy who's just been playing really well recently. Ownership's a little high, price a little high for him, but I like the form, and it's Scott Stallings. He has a lot of upside. This is a high volatility play in that he's missed a lot of cuts. So it's like he's the type of guy that's either giving you a top 10 or missing the cut.
Yeah.
In this field, in this type of tournament, I'm going for the upside. So I think I can get that there with Scott Stallings. Yeah,
and I'm assuming not a lot of people are going to go to him because I think when they see Scott Stallings in 8,900, even in this tournament, I think most people are out on that. They just rather to pay up for somebody or pay down for somebody. Like that 8K range is really rich with a lot of popular names that we'll find out as we do this. And I don't think Scott Stallings is among those popular names. So I think it's a really interesting tournament play.
Yeah, the early number, or the number I see now on his ownership is around 16%, 15, which is a little high, but
yeah, it's higher than I thought.
Same range as a lot of the other guys in the area.
Fair enough. And we'll see how this bears out when we see Steven's ownership article at the Win Daily Sports Golf page. Okay, so where are we at? We are back to David. It's your second pick.
It is, yeah. Look, I really like that Scott Stallings pick. He's had a couple of great weeks, and we also saw him fight super hard to get into that US Open and be able to make the field. So, and he's been impressive the last few weeks. So I think he is one of those who does have that high upside. He's going to be super volatile, but I think that's the play this week. I think you do need to actually embrace the volatility and also embrace the pricing. We know it is a weaker field. So if you see value in a guy, you need to go and get him because it's all relative, right? You're not actually spending $8,900 to pay for Scott Stallings. It's comparative to the strength of the rest of the field. So do keep that in mind. For me, I'm going to go right around that bracket that I've been previously. I'm going to take JT Poston, who's coming in at 8,000 at the moment. Again, just seen a huge spike in his approach last week when second at the Travelers, and unlike some others, Sia, who faded on the Sunday, he came in with a super strong final round, which was impressive. He likes these shorter courses, and it's really what he needs. Alongside that spike in approach, there was a spike in driving accuracy as well. So we've seen some good trends in his ball striking, and we know the guy can putt. Putting is generally where he makes the most of his strokes. Combined with the ball striking, I really like him this week.
Yeah, I'm really sad that you brought up a guy who did well Sunday because it just brings me back to the fact that I had Cantlay in every single big lineup. And not that I had a ton of big lineups, but I had some big lineups and they were doing really well. And all I needed was Cantlay to have like a first or second place day. And instead he had 9 bogeys and 1 double bogey. It was like staggering, truly staggering to watch that like slowly unfold because you're like, okay, when's the rebound? When's he going to get it together? And it's like, oh, he's not. Like, this is a thing. It's going to last all 18 holes. That was hard to watch.
It was shocking, absolutely shocking. And he had 5 birdies in there, wasn't it? 4 or 5 birdies. I mean, he had 3 pars all day. Bizarre. And to be honest, it's the type of thing that's going to leave some scars. It's going to leave some scars, a performance like that. I don't think he's going to bounce back straight away. And it probably puts him on hold just generally for the next kind of 6 weeks for me until I see a bit of recovery.
Fair enough. Yeah, it was crazy. Okay, so we have some nominations that are already in. Oh, okay. Well, that was easy. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Joshua Ray. Nick Hardy is the next guy to be drafted. Now, this is going to be another probably pretty popular guy at 8,700, but for good reason, right? David, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I do like Nick Hardy. I think he gets super high ownership because he's an Illinois native, and I think a lot of people do play that narrative as well. So just proceed with caution, I think, for me. I see his game spiking, but 8th is also his best ever finish on the PGA Tour. So, I mean, yes, great trends, but are we seeing the top of the upside? We don't really know yet. I just think perhaps with that narrative of being a local, does he perhaps see higher ownership than perhaps his price justifies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. He's definitely going to be a popular guy. What are we looking at, Joel, for Nick Hardy? I'm just going to guess like 18%.
Right now, it's 13.5. I'm seeing.
Oh, it's not bad. Okay, fair enough. All right, so I've got 2 picks here. I think I'm going to spend up a little bit here and then go to the middle of the range. I'm going to go with Charles Howell III at $9,300. Great course history, good recent form. He's gained ball striking 3 out of the last 4. A putter can be a big problem, but he's gained a little bit with the putter in the last 2 tournaments. And frankly, bad putters have succeeded here. Like, just look at Lucas Glover last time out. I mean, he's not a good putter at all. He gained 3 strokes putting, which at this tournament when he won, which is amazing for him. But I think the larger point is you can be a bad putter and potentially win this thing. So I like Charles Howell III at 9,300. And I'll go down to the 7,700 range. This is a guy I really, really like. I'm assuming he's going to be a little chalky. He's gained with the putter 5 tournaments in a row and 8 of the last 10. And when I tell you his name, you're going to be like, no, that's not true. Well, I'm telling you it's true. He's a good ball striker. And I'll say it again. He's gained with the putter 5 tournaments in a row and 8 of the last 10. It's Adam Svensson. So this is a guy that just a few months ago we're like, yeah, but he can't putt. Well, 8 out of the last 10 he's gained with the putter. So that's all I can tell you. And at 7,700, I think he's a tremendous value, and he's likely to be featured at the end of the show when we talk about outrights in first round leaders. So Adam Svensson for me at 7,700. I'll take that all day.
I love the Svensson pick. I'm very high on him. He was in my player pool this week. So, no qualms with me on that one.
Excellent.
I'm with you. I think it's a really strong pick. I'm going to definitely have him in my player pool as well.
All right. We got some nomination. We got a nomination. Oh, there we go. Okay. That was easy. Man, you guys are quick. Danny and Back 9 Bets, otherwise known as, by the way, if you guys don't follow at Model Maniac, he's an actual must follow at Model Maniac. That's Byron in the chat, Back 9 Bets. He does a show. He does a solo show, which is great, but he's also just a great dude as well. And he's going to be on this show really soon again. Sam Ryder, I'm not on Sam Ryder. Either of you two have an opinion on him?
I like him. I think it's a good pick. He tends to like this course. He's got a good history. His ball striking has been good. He's trending in the right direction. I think he can pop here. It's a volatile, but I think it's a good shot to take.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think he's in value actually at 7,100. I mean, he's finished second here before, and he's got an 18th. And comparatively compared to his other performances, he does tend to perform better here than on other courses. He was coming off a stretch of missed cuts and managed a 35th last week in a stronger field. So, if you can get a top 20 out of Sam Ryder, it's not a bad pick at all.
Edward jumping in with Byron is also a Super Jets fan. I don't know if that's a pro or a con, but it's true. Okay, so we are on David yet again. We have a third pick following John and JT Poston.
That's right. Yep. And so I'll be going for the Scotsman Martin Laird with my next pick.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Look, super accurate with the driver, super accurate with his wedges, super accurate on approach. We've seen upwards trend gaining multiple strokes of an approach in the last 3 tournaments, including a 13th last week at the Travelers. As I said, it's a very comparable course to what we're going to experience this week. He's had a third at TPC Potomac as well, which is another short course where accuracy is at a premium. And he's got a good record here. So 3 starts here, worst finish of 37th, a 28th and a 29th. Again, we're looking at the comparative strength of the field. This isn't the strongest event, and I think that a top 20 finish is absolutely on the cards for him.
Yeah, I agree. It's so interesting because, a few months ago when you were running a model, depending on what the tournament was, and you were looking at, for example, ball striking and, that kind of thing, Martin Laird was jumping up at the top of those models, but it wasn't bearing out in terms of like what he was finishing. He was either missing the cut or just finishing really, really poorly. And now we're starting to see what we saw in the models, 2 and 3 months ago. And it's funny because I'm very curious as to where he ends up from an ownership standpoint, because at the end of the day, he's still Martin Laird, but he's bearing the fruit of what we saw before. And it's like, are we really going to ignore that? Because we saw it a few months ago in the numbers. Now we're seeing it with the eye test. Like, it seems to me like it's the perfect time to take Martin Laird. Wow. Joel, with that said, you have already taken your 2 guys. One of them I was actually going to take. So this is interesting. Go ahead. Tell us who you took.
Yeah, I was going to quickly comment on Laird. I agree. I think he's a good pick here. I think he's made the cut twice. I like his current form, the way he's been playing. So likes the course. And the biggest factor here is it's just such a weak field that, when most weeks it feels like his upside is 30th. Most of those 30 guys ahead of him aren't playing this week. So it's kind of, he's got the upside is just hard to gauge because it's just such a weak field. So I think he's playing well. I think he's a good pick there. I put my 2 picks in already. I was quick. And those were the guys I was looking at. I was considering them with my second pick. So I knew I wanted them early. I really like Adam Schenk. He's another one whose form is good. He's been really bad recently with his putter, which is just not like him. He's typically, an above average putter, and he has the ability of getting hot. This is a week where I don't think he's going to continue to just be this bad. If he does get hot with the putter this week, I think he can win the whole tournament. So at 7,700, I think that price is more than fair for him in this field. And then Ryan Moore. So Ryan Moore is another guy who, price-wise is more than fair. I have no problem paying the 7,200 for him. We're getting him at sub 10% ownership. He's won this tournament. He's got a T2, a T18. He's got a really good history here. He's made 4 of his last 5 cuts, or at least his last 4 cuts he's made on the PGA Tour. His ball striking has been good. His short game has been bad recently, really bad. And so that's the other one. You just need him to come around, make some putts this week. And if he does, I think he'll also have a really good week.
Yeah, I was actually the guy I had my eye on was Ryan Moore. Can you tell me what his ownership is?
Yeah, it's 8.5, maybe 8.6.
I'm actually surprised it's even that high. Not that that's super high, but I'm surprised it's even that high. But I think Ryan Moore's, Adam Schenk's probably going to be a little bit more owned there.
For sure. Schenk, I think I had in the teens, but let me just double check that for you guys. 15 for Adam Schenk.
Gotcha. Okay. So here we are, David. It's already back to you. You started with John Huff, JT Poston, Martin Laird. Who you got?
Can I say if that's the ownership on Ryan Moore, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm surprised.
I mean, he's won this tournament. He's got a 2nd. He's got an 18th. He's got a 7th. The course history is absolutely elite in this field. So if that's his ownership, well, you need to be jumping on him at 7,200. That's mental. That's absolutely mental. For my next, I'm actually going to go to a player who is probably more known on the DP World Tour and has moved across to the PGA, which is Matt Wallace at 7,200.
No. What are you doing? That's who I was going to take. I can't believe you took him. Please tell us why. He's for the record, spoiler alert, he's going to be in on the end of the show as well. FYI. Go. Sorry, David.
Because I'm an expert, Sia, and this is what we do. Look, Matt Wallace has really struggled since moving to the PGA Tour. He came back to the DP World Tour after a bunch of missed cuts and a 67th, and he immediately spiked for a 5th at the Dutch Open. He was an 18th a week later at the Porsche European Open, which is, again, a short course, super difficult, driving accuracy to premium, lots of wedge shots. So he's gained strokes putting now the last 4 weeks, and the putter has really actually been the problem. So I'm playing on the fact that his confidence is back, having been back onto the DP World Tour, where he's obviously a lot more comfortable than he's on the PGA Tour, and he's finding a field which, quite frankly, is kind of at the standard where often these DP World Tour events are. So I really like him at this price, and I think he's an awesome pick.
Yeah, what he said. I really like Wallace as a contrarian play. I'm assuming, Joel, he's not carrying much ownership either.
The number I see on Wallace's ownership is 3%.
Love it. See,
Wow.
There we go. That's what we're talking about. I'll tell you right now, I was going to take Wallace if you didn't with one of my 2 next picks. I was going to take 2 contrarian guys. Now I can only take one of those 2. Okay, audience, it's to you. We have some okay. So Nate Lashley looks to be the guy. We had a lot of nominations, but Zach Jeffers and Ivan both nominated Lashley. He looks to be the guy that was he's the guy that was nominated. All right. Interesting. Nate Lashley. He's not in my player pool yet. Any of you 2 guys playing Nate Lashley?
Look, I think he's a decent enough pick. I wouldn't say he's my favorite pick of the week. He has had some stronger performances in stronger fields, and we saw him break a streak of a couple of missed cuts with the 25th last week at the Travelers. So, potentially I can see some value there. My concern would be that on approaches, he's not the strongest in that 50 to 150. So that's just something to be aware of. But look, I in terms of the quality of the player, I'd say he's higher quality than a number of others that we see in the field this week.
Yeah, that's interesting because, sorry, Joel, if you look at his general approach, it's okay. Like last 36 rounds, it happens to be 36th. But when you break it down by sort of certain proximities, it's not quite as good. I will say in his favor, he does hit fairways. He rates out really good tee to green, and he's a scorer. And here you're going to need scores. His DK points and his birdies over the last 36 rounds, both in the top 5. So that's pretty impressive. For whatever reason, I'm still not convinced on Nate Lashley, but I can't deny the value at 7,200. Joel, what are your thoughts?
I think he's a good value. I think there was a time maybe a month or two ago where he was really trending. I really liked him. I was playing him a lot. I think he's cooled off some since then, but I think a guy that within the last 2 months we really loved in a field as weak as this at 7,200, there's a lot of reasons to get behind him.
Yeah, Courtney shows up to the chat. Everybody loves Courtney. Everybody's like, "Hey, Courtney!" Where did the exclamation point person go? We haven't seen her or him in like 2 weeks at least. So
bring back Lindsay.
Lindsay, that's right.
Yeah.
Was it spelled like it was a female Lindsay, or was it spelled like a male Lindsay? Does anybody know?
I think gender neutral. It was SAY, but who knows? We'll keep the mystery of the Lindsay going.
I guess it's probably a guy. I'd like to default to a girl because I like the idea of girls watching the show too. But
100%.
Anyhow, everybody loves Courtney. Okay, so it's on me. Okay, so one of my guys, and I'm assuming this guy is very contrarian. He has been so bad lately, but his history here is good, and he's the exact type of guy that in a scoring fest could all of a sudden emerge out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, yeah, this kind of makes sense actually, especially when you look at his history on this course. It's Patton Kizzire at 7,400. Now, this is like I will admit, this is a extreme volatility play, especially if you look at really anything over the last 12, 24, 36, 50 rounds. It's not looking great. But again, I'm gonna default a little bit to course history here and to what I know Patton Kizzire can do on scoring fests historically. So that's what I'm going with. And now, while I stall and ask for David's opinion on this, it looks like I have 7,500 left for the next two players. Okay, David, what are your thoughts?
Patton Kizzire has perhaps the best moustache on tour outside of Eric Van Rooyen, so immediately has plus points within my my lineups. Look, I mean, this is the thing with this week. There are a huge number of players who have the opportunity to spike and win, and as a result, you are going to want to look for players where you can deviate, pivot, get away from ownership, because they're within this 7,000 range. There's 20 or 30, 40 players that really should be within your pool, because it is kind of much of a muchness in terms of what you're looking at. So I don't mind the plan whatsoever, especially in big GPPs. Differentiate yourself, make your lineup different in some way, and you need at least 2 to 3 different players, I would say, to the majority.
So I'm debating between two guys, and one is in the 8K range and one is comfortably in the mid 7K range. And it really kind of changes what I would do with the last guy in. So I'm really trying to figure out what I want to do here. I think I'm going to go with my initial guy that I liked at first. And he is also
in the 7K range, right?
No, in the low 8K range. I'm really actually having trouble with this because I know Nick Bretwish at Sticks Picks, who does the Better Golf Pod with Spencer. I know Nick really likes the guy that I like in the 7K range. So I'm trying to let that bias in so that I can take that guy. But yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take Nick's guy. I like this guy as well. Of course, he's great on approach and DK scoring, which I like to see. Not great with the putter, but you can win with it with being an average putter coming into this tournament. It's David Lipsky. I'll say who the other guy was after the show. I think he's actually going to get drafted though. But David Lipsky at 7,400. Again, I'm looking for guys that can flash, that are somewhat volatile, but can score in bunches. And David Lipsky is definitely one of those guys. Anybody have thoughts on Lipsky?
I like Lipsky. I think he's a guy that definitely has upside. Very recently, the last 2 tournaments, he missed the cut. He hasn't been trending. But I think, the way you have to build a roster, you're not going to be able to there's no lineup you're going to build that you're super comfortable with. So you got to find that one area where you're willing to sacrifice. But yeah, I think Lipsky certainly has top 10, even winning upside if he puts it together this week.
For me, I know Lipsky pretty well because he played on the DP World Tour originally before moving over to the PGA. And he was highly regarded over there by all means. And he's played very well at some high-end tournaments. So I'm personally waiting for the week that David Lipsky gets his first PGA Tour victory, because it is an inevitability. It could be here. When you look at the tournaments where he's played well this year, so like the Mexico Open, the Corrales Punta Cana, when it is these kind of weaker fields, he's finishing top 10. So I think the upside's there. And as he said, perhaps because of the performance the last few weeks, he gets a little lower ownership as a result. And he played better with the approach last week. It was the putter that let him down. So, I mean, that when I'm looking at the player profile, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the ball striking being good and hoping the putter gets hot. So, yep, don't mind it at all.
I love it. Hey, Joel, as we wait for the audience to nominate, so we have some nominations, but it doesn't look like we have a second. Can you check Patton Kizzire and Lipsky's ownership for us? I'm assuming, and I'm truly guessing here, that Kazier's he's got to be 4% or less, right?
So Kizire's coming in at 5.5.
Okay. And Lipsky is probably a little higher. I'm going to guess Lipsky's at 8%.
11 for Lipsky.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. So we have.
Before we do that,
yeah.
Edward asked a good question here, just generally in terms around the tournament. With the low end field, do you feel there's less float during tournaments or make it easier to win GPPs? I think the tournament, I mean, if there's overlay, there's value. So obviously that's good. I don't think the overlay is the value. I think it's going to fill. But what I do think is because a lot of these guys are mispriced from what you're used to, and it's hard to really build out the field, I think there's just going to be more. I think the ownership is going to be spread out. And so I don't think, there's going to be just as much chalk as there is on a week-to-week basis, which allows you to kind of just play you want. I think if you nail it this week, you can really win because I think just a lot of guys are going to be played. It's going to be really spread out. I would actually probably, outside of Webb and Hadwin on the top of the field, I wouldn't put too much weight into ownership because I think it's going to be really hard to get these super accurate just because I think it's going to be super spread thin in these mid-tier ranges.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. And by the way, it looks like Adam Long was nominated by the audience. But as we wait for David's pick, it's interesting because in these sort of like lesser tournaments, you could make the argument that, when you're playing like the Masters or a major or like a big event, you have some of the people come in that aren't necessarily like veterans to PGA DFS. They come in because they know it's a big tournament. They want to spend their money that they won somewhere else, like in whatever, baseball or NBA or something like that. Here, you might be subject a little bit more to players that really do know what they're talking about because in some of these tournament setups, because they're actually always going to be in these lobbies playing. With that said, it's really all about anticipating what their move is going to be. And this is a weird way to answer the question because it's not an actual answer, but I think this is why you need to be in Discord with us or some other outfit that can kind of talk to you about, okay, what's the tournament you're entering? Is it the $100 SC with 833 entries? That's going to be loaded with some like players that are like pretty good. Okay. And that doesn't mean you can't enter the tournament, but what it does mean is you have to anticipate what you think those guys are going to do. And I think in Discord, we can kind of talk you through maybe some guys to come off of so that you can pass those guys. If you're in like a huge tournament with a ton of entries, then maybe the analysis is a little bit different. Of course, you want to take some less chalky guys, in the bigger tournaments. We all always kind of know that. But again, in these lesser tournaments, it actually might be a tougher climb unless you are playing it right. And that's what we're trying to help you with in Discord and on these shows. So I know that's not really an answer to your question, but I think the short answer is I don't think it's easier. It might be a touch harder potentially to win to outright a tournament, but I think it's about the same at the end of the day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's super helpful as well for the folks who are in our Discord when they give us a brief of what type of lineup they're entering and what the conditions are, because that changes everything, right? If we're looking at a single entry versus like some big 150 GPP, there's a completely different scenario based on your lineup. So the more information you guys, the better to give you pivots.
And for the record, we're trying to incorporate pivots and let you decide as well. And so that's why we're touting, I hate to use that word, Matt Wallace, Patton Kizzire, some of these guys that we know people aren't going to want to roster. So now it's sort of in your hands. Do you want to take that risk with that low owned guy? We think you should. That's why we're putting them on our team. But it's one of those things where you have the knowledge now. Okay, this is a low owned guy. He's obviously very volatile. He's very risky. Do I want to play him in the one tournament I'm playing? If you're playing 5 tournaments, yeah, you want to play him in 1 or 2 of those potentially. But if you're playing one, you have to make that decision whether you want to go with that volatility or play it safe. Typically in tournaments, you don't really want to play it safe.
100%. And as I said, it's the week to embrace that volatility, which is just naturally going to come with a field like this. So in terms of the Adam Long pick, I really like Adam Long. I again, I think he, in regards to this field, is one of the stronger players that you can identify. Coming up off a couple of good finishes as well, a couple of top 30s. So again, those are stronger fields than what you're going to see this week. For my pick now, I think, Sia, this is potentially who you may have been thinking me. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going with Cameron Davis in that 8K range. And was that the guy?
It was not. I do like Cameron Davis. I was on him last week at 150 to 1. I'll tell you after we finish the draft. But it wasn't Cameron Davis. But I do like that.
Hush secrets. We can't be naming names and dropping names. We know what this is like, especially with the audience. To go before you see it, they'll grab them at any opportunity. So
that's right.
Look, based on the performance last week, I know many were actually quite high on Cam Davis, yourself, one of them, Sia, last week. And for the most part, it was looking like a great opportunity. And then nobody played, well, he was in, I think, the top 5 worst performances over the Saturday and Sunday for the weekend for Cam Davis. But that's what I'm looking for, is I want that volatility. I want that guy who can spike and come out with a really low round. And if we look at like the season-long metrics for the approach play, which is probably the way that I want to go, if we're looking at that 50 to 125 bucket, Cam Davis is 35th on the PGA Tour season long. So, I mean, in terms of this field, that's going to be within the top 5, I would say. So other than last week where he did drop on approach based on his weekend play, he was coming off a run of 8 consecutive strokes gained approach. And he's putting actually very, very well. So I'm seeing a lot in his game that I'm beginning to like. For what it's worth, his driving accuracy he gained on the field last week, which for Cam Davis is actually a rarity. I think some of that comes to being able to club down, which he'll be able to do here as well. And hopefully a few people are feeling burned after last week and he gets some lower ownership as a result.
I love it. And Joel, you took one of my guys. I was actually potentially going to draft one of those 2 guys, obviously the first one, because that's all I can afford. But tell us who you rounded out your lineup with.
See, I knew that was the guy you were drafting because Hank Lebioda is your boy. When he got hot last year, you were on him every week. I basically learned about Hank Lebioda through you. But he's starting to turn another corner. He's getting hot. He's gained over 3 strokes on approach each of the last 2 weeks. He hasn't been as good with his putter or the driver, but he's not terrible with the driver. So on this course, that won't kill him. And now we just need him to get hot with the putter, which he did last year. Last year he gave 5 strokes putting here. So he can get out with the putter here. If he puts one together here and gains 3 strokes on his approach shots, I think he's really going to compete. So at that 7,300 price mark, I think I'm getting a really good value. And then I rounded out with Patrick Rodgers. I like Patrick Rodgers here. He has a pretty solid course history. 23rd, 43rd, 2nd, 27th in his last 4 tries. His recent form is decent with the T31, T18 in his last 2. He's in really solid off the tee, which I think should really help him here. And he's shown the capability of really getting hot with his putter. And I do kind of think this turns into a putting contest. So if I can get a guy who's shown he's getting strokes pretty much everywhere but around the green, which I think is probably this is the course where you can around the green isn't that important. He gets hot with the putter. I do think he's a little overpriced, which is why he was kind of my last pick. But I had the salary. He was there, so he's a good fit for my lineup.
Yeah, I'm not a Patrick Rodgers guy, but I can't deny his game is trending in a really good way from a ball striking standpoint, not just with the off the tee, but also with the approach game. So I think that's a really good, like, just sort of upside play there.
I really like Patrick Rodgers this week. I think he's a fantastic pick. I know that there's other very sharp tipsters out there that have tipped up Patrick Rodgers as well. So certainly in terms of the experts in the market, he's getting some attention. And I believe rightly so. It feels strange playing Patrick Rodgers at a price of 8,800. Like, that just doesn't make sense. But in this field, it does. I think he's a great pick. And no qualms for me on that one at all.
All right, David, you got 1 pick left. You got John Huh, JT Poston, Martin Laird, Matt Wallace, Cameron Davis, and it looks like you have a lot of money left. So who's it going to be spent on?
I am, and I'm going to leave a ton of it on the table. And frankly, I don't mind. I think this is a great way to differentiate yourself, and it's a week that you can. What I'm going to ask first is, Joel, tell me what are you seeing ownership rise for Mav McNeely?
I have Mav right now at 12%.
Yeah, I've got him as 12 as well. I'm going to take him there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that a lot of people are super low on Mav McNeely, but if we discount the last little stretch that he's been in, we know that the upside is there and the game is there. His approach play is really what draws me to him. He can get hot with his putter as well. He's on a morning tee time. And, in terms of the expectations, when we're looking at some of these events, 7th at the Genesis Invitational, for example, that's featuring some of the best players in the world. It's a marquee event. And what I saw last week was a bit of a spike in his approach play again. And that's what I'm looking for, is that start of flipping the form around. And I began to see it this week. Driving accuracy spiked as well. So again, it looks like that ball striking is starting to come back. And if he can putt well here, which, just so you know, he has done previously, he was 18th here last year as well. This may be the week that he turns around. And if we're getting some low ownership, a great way to differentiate your lineup.
Yeah, I think Maverick McNeely is a really sharp play. I would have guessed his ownership was right around like 10, 11, 12%. But I think, with a lot of people going to Webb and Hadwin and maybe CH3, I don't think people are going to want to pay for Matt McNeely. They'd rather go down to your Patrick Rogers or some of those guys in the 8K range that we've already drafted. So I think that's a real smart play. And I noticed in some of his matchups for the tournament, granted, some of these matchups were against guys that were priced less than him, but it's not like he was some sort of huge dog in any of these matchups. I mean, he was properly favored with where his price was. And if you think he's overpriced, well, that's not what the market is telling me. I mean, so I think the market's respecting Matt McNeely maybe more than the DFS market. So
100%. And that's the way I see this week kind of playing out. I think people go to the top and they probably go Webb, Simpson, Hadwin, Thigala. I don't think Jason Day gets a hell of a lot of ownership, so Spencer's going to be happy. So I think they go there, and then they go past a lot of these other players in there. So for what it's worth, I liked Bezadenhout as well. I like Seabears. The tee time kind of puts me off a little bit because I do think that there's a Thursday AM, Friday PM draw as well. So I think that a lot of these guys get skipped, and then it goes down to the 8, 7K range. So if you can pull out one of those gems that performs for you and at low ownership, it's a great play.
Okay, a couple things real quick. So they've properly nominated. Gotterup almost made it, but we had somebody make it before Gotterup was nominated, and it's Cattle Barn Lahiri. That's an inside joke. You got to watch the First Cut podcast, the DFS show, courtesy of Byron. He did one of these strokes gain narrative lineups with Enerbon Lahiri. Anyway, that's their pick. But before I get Joel, I wanted to know if he was in your, because I know you've mentioned him before. His recent form hasn't been great, but we know he's a quality golfer. We saw it earlier this year. But I wanted to ask you real quick, David, the weather edge, to the extent it's Thursday AM, Friday PM, can you just give us an idea of how significant you think that might be?
For the moment, I mean, bear in mind, we've still got another day to go. So you will see the picks come out tomorrow for me, just on the basis of I'm waiting for this weather to clarify a little bit, but it's going to be somewhere between 1 to 1.5 strokes. So it's not the most significant that we've seen all year. TPC, Sawgrass at the Players was much higher, and the PGA Championship was higher as well, but it's worth considering. What I'm seeing Thursday afternoon is what I'm trying to dodge is sort of 15 to 18 miles per hour prevailing winds with gusts up to 30 miles per hour. Friday morning, we're also seeing some rain. So that could mean Friday PM gets softer conditions than perhaps expected as well. So somewhere in that 1 to 1.5 strokes is what I'm predicting that edge is going to be.
All right. That sounds good. That's why I'll tell you, my first round leaders are all in the AM wave. So just FYI there, we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But I will, I guess I'll close this out. So, I'm in a tough place here because there's not a lot of guys to pick from because we kind of looted this mid 7K range and I have 7,600 left. So I'll just tell you, I was between, and these aren't my favorite guys, but they are the guys that are left. I was between Doug Gim, Dylan Fratelli, and let's see, down here, 7,300. I considered Taylor Pendrith, but Tyler Duncan was the other guy. I'm going to go with Tyler Duncan because I just think Duncan's a better course fit or the best course fit out of all of those guys. And he's had, he missed the cut here last year, but the 2 times prior, 26th and 12th, which tells you something about Tyler Duncan, that he's probably pretty comfortable out here. His last few finishes have been good. He's made 3 out of 5 cuts. That includes a 15th place finish So I think he's in pretty good form. I know he's got good course history. It's not a sexy play, but can he finish top 25? I think the answer to that is yes. Will he make the cut? I think the answer to that is yes. 7,300, I'll take it.
Yeah, I liked Alec Duncan. He was one of the guys I was considering when I took Lebiota. It was him or Duncan. So he was definitely on my radar. He's one of those guys that can pop, right? If he really finds a putter, he will do really well. But yeah, he'll need to find the putter. But I think he's a volatile play, a good fit for this field.
Joel, I forgot to ask you about Lahiri. Is he in your player pool at all?
He is. As you know, I've touted him. I like Lahiri. This is a good field for him. Like if he puts it together this week, he can certainly have. He has a lot of upside. He can win the tournament. I'm not as heavy on him as I was a month ago when he was playing really well. I think he's not quite in the same form as he was, but if he finds something this week, I think he can in this field do really well.
Fantastic. All right.
Yeah, I like the Tyler Duncan play. I mean, he has got history here, which for most in the field doesn't exist. So the fact that you've got some course history is a positive for Tyler Duncan. The other one that I like in that range, Sia, and I think you may have been able to get him was Mark Hubbard. I wonder what your thoughts are on him.
Yeah, I didn't give him much of a look when I did my initial modeling. It just didn't come up great with him. He doesn't have any course history here. The recent form has been okay. But I did hear others bring him up. It might have even been in our Win Daily Sports Discord. And frankly, it might have been you. I'm not sure. But tell me more about Mark Hubbard, because that's one of those names where I just kind of glossed over and I really didn't put enough research into him specifically.
Yeah, it wasn't me in the Discord, so it's interesting that someone else has identified him in there as well. He's coming in off 5 straight weeks where he's gained on approach, and he's gained putting the last 4 as well. So I think we're seeing some positive signs in his game. Obviously, he plays a fair bit on the Corn Ferry Tour, but he's racking up top 10s, top 20s on that tour, and I mean, frankly, the strength of the field here is equivalent to a Corn Ferry Tour event. So, if I'm seeing positive signs in his approach, positive signs in his putting, his driving actually is there or thereabouts lately as well. I think he's potentially value.
It was an Animal Eagle fan in our Discord. He actually, I think it's he, submitted a lineup for us to look at, and it actually includes a lot of the guys we like, but it also includes Mark Hubbard. So that's who brought it up, somebody in the Win Daily Sports Discord. So all right, so that's it. So should we go over, I guess we can probably take the screen away. Should we go over a few of the guys that, go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, we'll do one quick round of guys we missed. We're surprised we didn't get drafted. There's 2 big ones for me that I did want to mention. Actually, the number 1 and 2 guys in the model that I ran did not get drafted, and those were Brendan Todd and Ches Reavie. Both guys I think are good fits here, and that's where I was that was the point I was starting to make earlier in the draft, in that there's a wide range of the high to mid 8Ks to the low 7, where it's like everyone's the same, and it's kind of like hard to differentiate. So at that point, if best is knowledge, if you can, just avoid the chalk, because there's such a small variance. Just don't play the high ownered guys, and there should be an edge in doing so. So in terms of Todd and Reavie specifically, neither one was overly owned. I got Todd at 11% and Reavie, let me just double check. Where's Reavie? At 14%. So, maybe slightly below average, middle of the pack, but 2 guys that I would want on everyone's radar.
Yeah, for me, I think CT Pan, he did not get drafted, right?
Mm-mm.
So he was the guy I was considering when I took my second to last guy. It was either going to be that mid 7K range where I was going to jump up to CT Pan. And then if I was going to do that, it was going to leave me with like 7,000 left. And I was probably going to take one of the young guns like Austin Smotherman or Lee Hodges, or I think Hayden Buckley might be down there as well. So that's how my lineup construction would have looked if I took CT Pan. But I think CT Pan is really interesting. I think he can be volatile, but when he marries the off the tee game with the approach game, which doesn't happen a lot, he can really shoot up leaderboards. So I think Pan is really interesting. I'm surprised that he didn't get drafted. David, what about you?
Yeah, my only concern with CT Pan would be, obviously we had a withdrawal from him fairly recently, and another one before that as well. So there are some injury concerns. If you're putting CT Pan in your lineup, I want to be keeping an eye right up till 20 minutes before tee time, just to make sure that he's actually in the field. But I mean, in terms of the quality of the player compared to the field, absolutely. As well with Brendan Todd was right up there on my list of players that I was keeping an eye on. Unfortunately, he's drawn the wrong side of the draw for me. But in terms of his iron play, particularly around that 50 to 125 bracket, he's playing really well, and we know the accuracy of the driver is a big surprise for Brendan Todd. In terms of surprise for the week, I mean, it's almost a week of like being surprised who got drafted. I would have said Steve Stricker, but I've seen he's just withdrawn from the tournament as well. And I think he was potentially a big play. Maybe Tagala. I think he's going to be fairly popular, and he had a fantastic week last week until the 18th hole. So Tagala for me would be the one that is the surprise. I think you'll see high ownership. He's probably someone that I'm going to avoid totally, just on the basis of that high ownership and what happened on the 18th. I think there's potentially some scarring issues that will come from that. But we know that he's a highly talented individual, and I expect him to, I'd say probably around 15% ownership is what you're going to see on him.
Mm-hmm. Joel, what are we looking at with the Gala?
It's pretty high for Thigala. I'm looking at 12%. So,
not bad
compared to the top.
Yeah. All right. So if the audience, if you guys have any people that you were surprised didn't get drafted, feel free to put them in the chat here. But Joel, is it time to move on to outrights and first round leaders?
Yes, that is a wrap for the draft. And don't forget, while you're hitting the like button and giving us a follow like you were about to do, don't also forget to drop a note. Let us know which team you think is the best, who you think is going to win. We're going to drop it in Twitter later. We'll recap and see. Probably going to pick my team, but feel free to come up with your own opinions and let us know who you like. With that being said, we're not done yet. We do have some outrights and first round leaders. David, why don't you kick us off? What do you like in the outright market this week?
So I'm going to drop a couple of names here. As I said, this is all pending the weather advantage coming to fruition. But I've got Matt Wallace at 110 to 1. With 5 places on Bet365, so that's fantastic value for me. I've got Martin Laird at 60 to 1, and I've got Ryan Armour at 110 to 1 as well.
All right. So Joel, I have one of David's. I even have it at better odds on DraftKings. So I'll end with that. I'm going to give 4 outrights out, and then I'm going to give 6 first round leaders. So usually I do like 5 and then like a bonus one at like really long odds. So that's kind of what I'm going to do here. But the outrights, Cameron Davis, I'll take another shot at him. It's 45 to 1. It's not as sexy as 150 to 1, but I want to kind of keep this Cameron Davis thing going at least for a couple weeks in a row. Adam Svensson, 65 to 1, wrong side of the draw. But if it's not super significant from an outright standpoint, I'm not as concerned. Obviously, first round leader is a completely different analysis. This one is a little sketchy, but I'm going to go with it. Patton Kizzire at 80 to 1. And then finally, it's Mr. Matt Wallace at 130 to 1 on DraftKings. So whether it's 130 to 1 or 110 to 1, it's still 100 and something to 1. So it's pretty awesome. And I do think I love what I'm seeing from Matt Wallace on the World Tour. And I love that nobody else is really paying attention to that, because that means we're seeing it, but not everybody's seeing it. And I include the sports books in that too, because listen, is Matt Wallace going to win the tournament? Probably not. But I could say the same thing with somebody that's way shorter odds. I think the larger point is he shouldn't be 110 or 130 to 1. If we're paying attention to what he's doing on the other side of the world or across the pond, if you will, he should probably be an 80 to 1 shot.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, bear in mind, Matt Wallace, with that pick, I'm going through Bet365, so I get place terms as well with that. So you get a sort of partial payout if he's finishing in the top 5, but 130 is just massive. And for someone of that talent, just makes no sense. Bear in mind, this is a guy who has 10 professional wins. He's won 4 times on the European Tour. 2 of those wins have come at 19 under and 21 under, so he's not opposed to these super low-scoring events by any means. And then when you're looking at the Challenge Tour and the Alp Tour wins, again, many of those have come at really low numbers. So, I see upside for sure. I think he can absolutely win it.
All right.
I love it. So, one thing I wanted to highlight is when you're looking at outrights, because of the mediocrity of the field, it feels like a good week to go for long shots, right? There's probably a smaller gap than most weeks. And I was just having fun. If you go to the bottom, there's like 10 guys DraftKings is offering 800 to 1 odds on, which is unheard of. Now, I tried to pick one to tout for the show, and I still can't. They're just bad. There's no reason to support any of the guys that are 800 to 1, so I can't do it because they're too bad. But there's a few guys at 400 to 1 that, like, if you really want to take a swing on, at least I could wrap my head around it. Like, for example, Flavin, who we've mentioned on the show multiple times in previous weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Watney, who at least we've all heard of. Bo Hogue, Bo Van Pelt, we've seen get hot in tournaments before. So, listen, I don't recommend putting a lot of money on any of those bets, but 400 to 1 in this tournament where, like, there's no one that's that good in golf in the tournament at all, it seems like it could be some fun if there's someone you wanted to put a buck or two on to have some fun with it. Now, in more coming back to reality on terms of guys who I think can actually win the tournament, someone who hasn't been mentioned at all tonight, who I think is very volatile, I don't love as much in the fantasy side, but I wouldn't mind putting an outright ticket on, is Steven Yeager at 130 to 1. We've seen him get hot, and I'll definitely be playing him in showdown lineups. If you can put 4 days together, I think 130 to 1 is a really solid number on him. In addition to that, I like Adam Schenk, who I drafted on my team at 60 to 1. I like, I think the audience drafted Sam Ryder, who you can get 80 to 1. Hank Lebiota at 80 to 1. And my last play, someone we can really kind of swing for the fences on at 200 to 1. And this is someone I really like. I actually played a lot of him this year. He's been getting a little cold, so I haven't been playing him as recently. But he certainly has the upside, and that's Brian Stewart at 200 to 1.
All right. I'm looking at these long odds now, Joel, and I see Joseph Bramlett at 200 to 1. I see Hayden Buckley at 150, Hodges at 150, Michael Thompson at 150. It would be like if you were going to pick a tournament to spread yourself thin with bets. I mean, this might be the one where you just put, not as much on each bet because you're just taking, 150 to 1 and 180 to 1 shots. This would be a fun tournament to actually try that out.
Well, the big thing that I think about is, like, when we go to a major, the guys outside of 50 or 60 to 1 have no chance. They're never going to win that tournament.
Yeah.
Right. This week, a guy at 100 to 1 could easily win this tournament. Like, that wouldn't even be that big a surprise. So, like, if you like taking long shots, this is the type of tournament. This is the week to do it.
That's right.
Well, where were you seeing 200 to 1 Joseph Bramlett? What mark was that, Sia?
DraftKings.
For the first round leader or outright?
No, outright. 200 to 1. Yeah.
Jeez. On Bet365, he's 140.
Interesting. Bramlett's been playing pretty well. A couple tournaments ago, he played really well. The ball striking, at least.
And if we're moving into the first round leaders, I've got him in my first round leader picks for Joseph Bramlett because I trust him in one round much more than in 4. So I'll start with him for my first round leader, 100 to 1. Martin Laird, 60 to 1. Ches Reavie, 61. And Mav McNeely at 45 to 1. Again, I just trust Mav a little bit more in that 1 round market rather than over the course of the full tournament.
I love those picks. Big fan.
Yeah, I really like them. For me, in the first round leader market, I got my eye on Chesson Hadley at 110 to 1. Big number, but I think he could put a hot day together here for sure. And I like Ryan Moore at 100 to 1. And someone in the audience almost drafted my last pick, also at 100 to 1, Christopher Gotterup.
Nice.
Nice. Funny story about Chesson Hadley. Last week when I was running the models for the my initial model for the Travelers, and my initial model is usually very specific, and then I kind of like make it a little bit more generic as I do it because I want to just emphasize and overemphasize certain metrics that I'm really interested in. But I always want to go specific just to see who I see. Chesson Hadley was 7th in my model in the first iteration of it last week for the Travelers. Now, granted, full disclosure, some of the other people in my model like missed the cut. Like Neiman was like in the top 3 and Spieth was up there, whatever. So it's not like it was some brilliant thing where like all these, but when Hadley was 7th, I was like, this model's stupid. Like I'm not even gonna look at this twice. I mean, I understand like Hadley has some, Hadley when his approach game is on like 3 or 4 years ago, like he can be good, but I was just so shocked to see that. And anyway, I went back and looked at it and because I printed it out because I like to waste paper. And I was like, man, I wish I had just like put him in one lineup. I make like 15 to 20 a week. I could have put him in one because he jumped out at me. But anyway,
he got a top 10, didn't he?
Yeah. Maybe was it top? Like he like crushed it on Sunday. He shot like a 64 or something. I'm sure somebody in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, 5th. He was 5th.
Unbelievable.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. No, that would have been some great great value here. Sometimes you just got to trust the model. You just got to stick with your game plan. And I respect your opinions here in majority of things, and you tend to get it right more than not. So thank you, Seth.
I mean, I also thought Cantley was going to win the tournament going into Sunday.
I think we all thought that.
He shot like 11 strokes worse than Chesson Hadley when it mattered. So figure that one out. That's so golf. Okay, so my first round leaders are as follows. I'll start with Nick Hardy at 50-1. I'm not playing him a ton in DFS, but I do think he has actual win potential here and certainly first round leader potential. I'll go Patton Kizzire at 75-1, Martin Laird at 75-1. Oh, wow. Okay, so let me start over because I just saw that Bramlett is in here. Okay, so that's cool that I'm sharing one with David here. So let me start over from the top. Nick Hardy, 50-1. Cameron Davis, 55-1. Martin Laird and Patton Kizzire at 75-1. Joseph Bramlett, that's going to be the long bomb at 130-1. But the breaking news, the guy that's actually going to win the tournament, this is the sixth guy, but really Bramlett's the sixth guy. The guy that's going to win the first round leader is none other than a guy we've been talking about this entire show. It's a long shot, but he's starting to come into good form. The books aren't paying attention. He's 100-1 to be your first round leader, and his name is Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace on a good day is exactly. Matt Wallace on a good day is the class of this field, or at least among the class of this field. And at 100-1, I'm all about it.
I like it. I'm with you. I think that's the type of sneaky move you want to make. Someone who's been playing well, flying under the radar, trending. Yep, I'm going to have to sell my car, mortgage my house, and then be rich by Thursday night. So great, I'm in.
I'm booked in to donate both of my kidneys this evening to put more money on Matt Wallace to win first round leader. But audience, please remember, gamble responsibly.
Yes. I mean, don't practice because we know what's going to happen, but like in fairness, like you don't know, like we're obviously the experts. We know who the first round leader is going to be, but we don't expect you to leverage limbs or organs, but definitely lie, cheat, and steal and put everything you can on.
Maybe just one kidney. Maybe just one. Don't go
maybe
both.
One.
You have another one for a reason, right? Like,
right.
It's easy.
Exactly.
So.
Thank you.
Gamble responsibly.
So that's it. That is a wrap for tonight. Check it out. Let us know. We're going to post the lineups on Twitter. Put us in a vote. Who do you think is going to win? We'll come back with the results at the end of the week for sure. Had a lot of fun tonight. David, thank you so much for filling in. It's a pleasure as always. Sia, what else am I missing?
Yeah, so I think David's going to be back with us next week. The Scottish Open is next week, right, David?
It is. We are in Open Championship build-up now. So Irish Open this week is a massive event as well. I think there might be some DraftKings markets out there as well, which are going to take some interest, which would be great to see some attention over to the DP World Tour.
Are you writing any material? Are you writing any material for the Irish Open this week?
Oh, yeah. I'm big on the Irish Open. That's a big event. And we've got Shane Lowry coming back into the field where, funnily enough, he won as an amateur on the Irish Open in just ecstatic scenes. Go find it on YouTube of fans crowding the green to go and hug Shane Lowry having won the Irish Open as an amateur. And that's the thing for golf, right? There's emotion, there's history, there's legacy behind these tournaments rather than a paycheck. So that's what I love, and that's what draws me to watching golf.
Hashtag Live Tour. You're just not going to cut it. And I think that's what the message there was from David. Joel, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I guess Rory can't play on another tour after all the defense he's been doing the last 2 weeks at the PGA Tour. I'm surprised Rory's not playing in it.
Yeah. For the record, where can we find your work and your write-ups on the Irish tour, or excuse me, the Irish Open?
Yeah, so I mean they'll be posted tomorrow. Again, there looks to be a weather edge, so I'm waiting for that to clarify. But both those will be on the Win Daily website, or I'll be dropping them in the Discord as well with your links. So make sure you're signed up.
And what does the Irish Open kick off like in the middle of the night, like Wednesday, like Thursday morning? Like when should be, if people want to make like DraftKings lineups, when should they be prepared to actually submit those?
Yeah, it is a little bit earlier. So it probably is the middle of the night for you guys tomorrow evening. So early afternoon tomorrow, I'll be keeping an eye out on your inbox. Generally what I do like to do as well, and I think in celebration of the fact that we've just had another 65-1 ticket, I will publish that Irish Open article free of charge no need to subscribe. And then if you want to jump in and see the other picks on the John Deere Classic as well, you can get 7-day free trial. Just chuck in Go Free on your code as you subscribe.
You can find all of that on windailysports.com. That is fantastic. So if you follow at Deep Dive Golf, which I assume everybody listening already does, you're going to probably get a notification when he posts both of those articles. And again, it sounds to me like you can go to windailysports.com tomorrow afternoon, early evening, and you'll get one of those articles for free. And he has been on fire. With all that said, take his advice, go to windailysports.com, join us for 6 months, a year, or just do the free trial, which sounds like David knows it better than I do, but you get a free week, I think, just to enjoy all the stuff, not just the golf stuff, but the Major League Baseball stuff and early NFL stuff we might be talking about. Who knows? There's a UFC, NASCAR. We literally do it all. That's pretty much it. I hope everybody enjoyed the A Few Good Men tribute at the front end of the show. David, thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week. We'll have a full house. It'll be us three and Spencer next week. And of course, most importantly, it'll be the audience. Ivan, Edward, Brent. I'm not looking at all the names. Byron, David, all of you guys that were in here. Thank you so much. Courtney, of course. There's so many. I'm not running through them right now, but thank you very much. And the last thing, of course, is somebody want to say it?
Sports.
Wrong. Sports.
Oh.